With Disney's Snow White still stagnant and sitting at $169 million worldwide, and really just slowing down at this point because of a Minecraft movie, we know that those out there like Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, and the many executives are in pure panic mode about this movie.
Disney once stood unchallenged at the pinnacle of family entertainment. For generations, the name alone promised magic, wonder, and box office triumph. But that unspoken rule is cracking fast. In one of the most surprising twists of recent cinema, a beloved but drastically updated remake of Snow White is losing ground to none other than the Minecraft movie. On one side, we have a classic fairy tale reworked for the modern age. On the other, a pixelated phenomenon that started as a humble indie game, only to become a juggernaut with global fan appeal. How did we get here? And how did Disney's crown jewel find itself upstaged by blocky characters from a video game? This is more than a clash of two films. It's a showdown of cultural shifts and fan expectations. Disney's Snow White was supposed to be an easy win, a timeless story with built-in nostalgia. Yet controversy after controversy swirled around it, from early casting decisions to final script changes that upset the very fans Disney counted on. Meanwhile, Minecraft soared with minimal fuss, defying expert predictions and scoring record-breaking numbers. Fasten your seatbelts. This is one cinematic scuffle nobody saw coming. Long before anyone was glued to smartphones, Snow White captured hearts and gave birth to Walt Disney's animation empire. When the original animated Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs debuted in 1937, it was more than just a cartoon, it was a revolution. Critics at the time called it Disney's folly before release, convinced nobody would watch a feature-length animated film. Walt Disney proved them all wrong, changing Hollywood forever in the process. That's why Snow White isn't just another IP on Disney's shelf, it's the foundational stone of the entire brand. Over the decades, it became a rite of passage for children and a comfort watch for older fans. So when word got out that Disney planned a live-action Snow White for the modern era, many braced themselves. Disney had hit or miss success with these remakes. Some soared at the box office, others stumbled. But messing with the original princess? That felt like playing with fire. As we'll see, the final blaze burned far hotter than any executive likely anticipated. Yet part of the excitement was the nostalgia factor. The prospect of seeing iconic scenes, like Snow White singing in a forest or biting into the red apple, resurrected on modern screens was too tempting for many fans. Disney's job seemed simple: update a few bits, keep the magic, and watch the money roll in. But the plan wasn't quite so straightforward this time around. Not only did the studio attempt to modernize a story nearly a century old, but they also chose a creative direction that left even die-hard Disney divorced. From the outset, the casting of Rachel Zegler as Snow White ruffled feathers. In the classic fairy tale, Snow White is described as having skin as white as snow, which led some traditionalists to question Disney's choice. For Disney, this was an opportunity to prove their commitment to inclusivity, a chance to show that the magic of Snow White can transcend its 1930s origins. But not everyone was sold on the idea. Social media instantly erupted with debates about whether the studio was honoring tradition or simply trying to score woke points. Online forums buzzed with heated arguments, ranging from supportive to deeply skeptical. Some saw the casting as fresh and empowering, while others labeled it a misguided attempt at modernizing a classic. In truth, the casting alone might not have caused such a stir if Disney had stayed faithful to the spirit of the story. Instead, fans sensed that more changes were on the horizon, changes that could compromise the fairy tale's core. Behind closed doors, whispers hinted that executives at Disney were confident this controversy would generate free publicity. In the past, any chatter about a new live-action princess would lead to big opening weekend crowds, no matter how big the pre-release debates got. Unfortunately for them, 2025 proved that audiences have become more selective than ever, especially when it comes to the cultural pillars they hold dear. This clash between tradition and a modern worldview would only intensify once Rachel Zegler began speaking openly about her role. Disney had tried subtle modernizations in previous remakes, tweaking storylines, expanding character backstories, or boosting female leads' agency. But for Snow White, the changes felt more like an overhaul than a refinement. Gone were many of the classic story beats that fans adored. Instead, new plot points emerged to showcase a more empowered Snow White, and speculation arose about whether the Seven Dwarfs were even central to the story anymore. Insiders revealed that Disney worried younger audiences wouldn't connect to the dated idea of a princess who simply waits for rescue. On paper, that concern seems valid. Disney wanted to show Snow White as a leader, a character with her own goals rather than a passive figure. But problems quickly surfaced when these changes overshadowed everything that once made the story charming. Some fans cried foul, arguing that you can update a fairy tale without discarding its soul. They also felt Disney was ignoring what made Snow White iconic: the innocence, the camaraderie with the dwarfs, and the fairy tale wonder that introduced the world to feature-length animation. The new version started to sound more like a lecture on modern ideals than a journey into a once-upon-a-time fantasy. Anticipation gradually morphed into anxiety, setting the stage for even bigger controversy when Rachel Zegler took center stage in interviews. It's no secret that a lead actress can heavily influence public perception, especially in a high-profile remake. Rachel Zegler quickly found herself at the heart of a media maelstrom. From the moment she sat down for the first interview, her quotes about how outdated the original story was began circulating like wildfire. She explained that the 1937 classic was obviously not suitable for modern audiences, doubling down on how her interpretation would be radically different. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about how excited viewers were to revisit Snow White. It shifted toward whether Disney had fundamentally betrayed a cherished tale. Die-hard Disney fans felt lectured, while more neutral audiences wondered why the lead actress was tearing down the very story she was hired to recreate. Social media threads and YouTube comment sections turned toxic in record time, with some defending Zegler's perspective and others calling it ungrateful. What escalated tensions further was the sheer frequency of her appearances and interviews. Disney, perhaps seeking extra buzz, allowed Zegler to keep talking, even when her comments alienated fans. A string of viral moments, like labeling the prince as a stalker and describing Snow White's love story as weird, only fueled the fire. Each soundbite felt more controversial than the last, turning the film's promotion into a spectacle. By the time the promotional cycle ended, many potential ticket buyers felt they'd been scolded for ever loving the original. As the public reaction soured, insiders claimed that Disney executives were torn. Some wanted to rein in Zegler's statements, while others believed any publicity is good publicity. In the end, the only real result was a building sense of dread about how this reimagined Snow White would fare once it hit theaters. When the first batch of reviews arrived, things looked surprisingly bleak. Critics who ordinarily championed Disney's progressive takes found themselves stuck. They wanted to celebrate a new spin on a classic story, but many admitted the movie felt forced. The most common complaint: the film tries so hard to be modern that it forgets to be magical. Fans who saw test screenings complained the narrative was weighed down by a preachy tone. Gone was the simplicity of good versus evil, replaced by complicated moral lessons that felt out of place. Meanwhile, the trademark joy of discovering new songs or lavish Disney sets was overshadowed by constant commentary on how outdated the original had been. Viewers didn't show up looking for a lesson in revisionist fairy tales. They wanted the enchantment they'd grown up with. On social media, disillusionment took hold. Hashtags calling for a boycott trended periodically, though many wondered if that was too dramatic. Still, the overall sentiment was that Disney had bungled what should have been an easy home run. Interestingly, this wasn't a standard critics versus audience scenario. A portion of the press criticized the film for not being fun, while a chunk of everyday fans simply wrote it off as a cash grab that had lost sight of what made Snow White special. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse for Disney's famed princess, a pixelated competitor stepped onto the scene with enough force to blow everyone out of the water. While Disney wrestled with damaged expectations, the Minecraft movie was quietly gathering steam. Few anticipated it would become a major threat. After all, video game adaptations often have a spotty track record. Critics scoffed that a blocky sandbox game with no set storyline couldn't possibly form a compelling narrative. They predicted a modest box office haul and assumed it would fade quickly. They were wrong, wildly wrong. Minecraft isn't just a game, it's a global phenomenon that bridges generations. Kids, teens, parents, and even grandparents either play, or at least know someone who does. The concept of building entire worlds from pixelated blocks is both simple and infinitely creative, fostering a fandom with a massive emotional connection to those square-shaped characters. Not to mention, content creators on every major platform have been showcasing Minecraft for years, building a worldwide community. The Minecraft movie reportedly embraced the game's adventurous spirit, layering comedic elements onto a plot that actually resonated. Early word of mouth was that it was just plain fun, offering an escape rather than a moral lecture. Fans turned up in droves, many in pixel-themed t-shirts, and the positive buzz spilled onto social media. Suddenly, the film critics dismissed as a kid's gimmick was drawing sold-out crowds and sky-high opening weekend estimates. When opening weekends rolled around, the results were staggering. Minecraft blew past analysts' forecasts, claiming a global opening worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The movie's success dwarfed expectations to such an extent that even industry veterans were stunned. It turned out that pure escapism, combined with a well-loved franchise, created the perfect recipe for box office domination. Meanwhile, Snow White stumbled badly, limping to an underwhelming debut that sent shockwaves through Disney's boardroom. Many blamed negative online chatter for scaring off audiences, while others argued that the film simply wasn't appealing enough on its own merits. Attempts to salvage the momentum with last-minute promotional pushes fell flat. The film's underperformance was so severe that analysts started calling it a historic misfire for the studio. Social media had a field day with the numbers. Memes circulated, showing Snow White all alone in an empty theater while blocky Minecraft characters celebrated record-breaking ticket sales. Commenters mocked the irony of a 9-decade-old fairy tale losing to a modern phenomenon that didn't even exist a couple of decades ago. For some, it was proof that heavy-handed reimaginings can't trump genuine fan affection. For others, it was a sign that Disney's once unchallenged dominion over family films was cracking under the weight of its own poor decisions. Inside Disney's corporate offices, tension soared. Rumors flew about who would take the fall. Some pointed fingers at the marketing team for failing to pivot when early indicators showed fan backlash. Others blasted the creative leads for straying too far from the original story, thereby alienating the audience. A few singled out Rachel Zegler, arguing her public statements had eroded goodwill long before the movie hit theaters. Yet the truth likely lies somewhere in the mix. Disney's internal pipeline, once known for near-flawless synergy, may have been weighed down by rushed development, conflicting rewrites, and an over-reliance on brand loyalty. After all, a name like Snow White can't fail until it does. Sources claim that executive meetings turned fiery, with senior figures complaining that the film's progressive messaging overshadowed basic storytelling. One camp argued that modernizing fairy tales is the only way to keep them relevant, while another insisted that Snow White was timeless as is. Meanwhile, the broader public watched the drama unfold, more fascinated by Disney's internal meltdown than by the movie itself. The story had become bigger than the film, a cautionary tale of what happens when a megacorporation forgets the core values that once made it a legend. As Snow White struggled and Minecraft soared, discussions turned to Disney's future. Are these repeated missteps, the mishandling of beloved classics, the divisive casting, the tone-deaf marketing, symptoms of a deeper organizational problem? Critics argue that the company's leadership might be out of sync with the fan base that once championed everything Disney touched. The truth is, Disney still holds immense power. It's not going to vanish overnight, but every flop or underperforming remake chips away at the fortress built on decades of unshakable reputation. The brand that once symbolized childhood magic now raises eyebrows. Fans worry that if even Snow White, the film that literally launched Walt Disney into legend, can be so thoroughly misunderstood by its own creators, what hope is left for other cherished classics? Then there's Rachel Zegler, caught in the center of it all. Some say she's a scapegoat for a flawed production. Others believe her controversial comments truly alienated fans who might have otherwise given the film a chance. Going forward, any project that hires her will do so with eyes wide open, fully aware of the baggage from her outspoken stint as Snow White. In the grand fairy tale showdown, Disney's Snow White remake faced off against a modestly pitched Minecraft movie and lost. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about who captured hearts and who preached too loudly, who listened to fans, and who told them to accept a radical update without question. Whether Disney will learn from this remains to be seen. The studio has other remakes lined up, each with an established fan base protective of its nostalgic memories. If one thing is certain, it's that the age of automatic Disney blockbusters is over. Audiences are too savvy and too vocal for that. They'll celebrate a remake that resonates with the core of what made the original beloved. They'll reject one that warps a treasured story into something unrecognizable. And if that means Minecraft is the one left standing in the final reel, so be it. This drama isn't finished yet. Boardroom decisions, fan petitions, and possible reboots are all swirling in the background. Perhaps Disney will regroup and return stronger. Or maybe the era of unstoppable Disney remakes is fading, giving way to new players and unexpected hits, like a blocky band of adventurers from a pixelated realm. Either way, we'll be watching, because in Hollywood, nothing is permanent, and the next twist could be just around the corner.